For me, the proposition that I was approached with by the Chief Minister was very much a very clearly defined remit, and that's the one I've undertaken. So I think Daphne had become a general spokesperson around children's issues. I was asked to take on a very specific remit, and it's around three categories of young person: those looked after children, children with complex needs, and young carers. And I'm very focused on delivering against that remit.
And of those three, you say that looked after children will be the majority, I suppose.
That's my experience in the 18 months so far. Yes, I think. Clearly, the relationship between government and those young people is different because we are the corporate parents of those young people who've effectively been taken into care by the state. And clearly, there's perhaps some lessons from the past that speak quite loudly to how we need to care for our looked after children.
You speak about numbers going up. For instance, numbers in care homes risen 27% to 31%. Looked after children has increased by 11%. Why?
So there's some natural variation in the numbers of children in care, and it has. You're absolutely right, John. It's spiked in the latter part of 2019, and the officers feel that this is part of the natural rhythm, and that you can clearly have one or two situations where multiple children are involved, and the numbers can change quite quickly. But there's an underlying challenge, particularly around the foster care arrangements, where we're really struggling for capacity. And
you say the approach is not sustainable. It's a phrase that's used. If it's not sustainable, of course, it's going to break down, isn't it?
I chose my words advisedly, John. I'm not knocking individuals who are working hard to try and put right a system that's gone badly wrong on the Isle of Man over the last few years. But we're really pushing at the edges. There is a lack of available capacity in foster care, and we've got children younger than they should be that are in residential care on the island.
It's been years now since those dreadful murders years ago, which sparked a closer look at the care of children in care. We've had all that time, and we still seem to be struggling to get it right.
Yes, and of course the Lease Lodge murders, which you refer to, were actually the driving force for this children's champion role to be established in the first place, and it always was about those very vulnerable young people. It wasn't about children generally. But yes, this is a difficult area. Social work, children and families work is very challenging. It's there's difficulties in recruiting, as there is on the Isle of Man in many areas, getting the right expertise, and of course these are not easy situations to deal with, and particularly in what I've seen in the 18 months since being appointed children's champion, we've got a service that's in transition. It was operated by the Children's Centre. It was brought back into government in October of 2018.
You're having to rely on existing carers, you say, at the moment.
There has been no real recruitment of foster carers on the island in that interim period. Now, the department has quite correctly wanted to make sure the foundations are solid and that we've got a sustainable solution for the long term. And that's about...
You're confident you can do that? You're confident we're not just floundering?
It's not me doing it.
But the government can actually come up with answers.
Well, that's my role. This is a very interesting role because it's a scrutiny role, but it's one that's very close to the actual departments in terms of more involvement on an ongoing basis than most scrutiny roles. So I'm there holding Department of Health and Social Care to account, Department of Education, Sport and Culture to account for the way that these young people's educational experiences are happening.
So you're actually taking on other departments.
Yeah, that's the role, and that's why I've consciously brought this annual report to the floor of Tynwald with a motion that it be received in order to prompt the debate around some of these issues. Because these are so important issues, and these are the most vulnerable young people in our society, and they haven't been getting the right outcomes historically, and that's why I brought the Select Committee motion for the review of accommodation for vulnerable young people, which was, in my view, was a very successful select committee. And we absolutely have to do far better than we are doing. And the transition back from the operation by the Children's Centre back into the department has not progressed as quickly as I had hoped. And this isn't a criticism of individual people, but the test for me is it, would this be good enough for my own children? My role in summary terms is to be a voice and an advocate for those young people who can't speak for themselves. And in simple terms, it's not good enough where we are now. We're making progress. There's some real positives that I highlight in my report, but the objective test of is it good enough now? The answer is no. And one of my biggest concerns is around foster caring, where the relationship between the department and foster carers is poor. Steps are being taken to try and move that in the right direction, but there's some real rebuilding of trust and confidence both ways needed there. And as a result of the decisions to halt foster care recruitment, we have virtually no spare capacity in foster care. And as a result of that, you've got young people who are going into residential care when they wouldn't ideally go there. And the department is having to make choices which are difficult because of the circumstances they are in.
But pragmatically necessary.
Yes, and I support decisions being made pragmatically, because you have to handle these situations as they come up, but they've got to fix the underlying causes. And the department has a game plan, but it's taken far longer to get where we are now than I had hoped. And officers have acknowledged that in the Children and Families Division. They share that frustration. And what I want to do is basically keep this in the spotlight. This is a very, very important issue. These young people don't have a mouthpiece themselves. It's difficult for foster carers to come and speak openly about the situation. And for me, it's about getting better outcomes, and that's why I'm passionate about this role.